Joining with me today is Run 7, and we're going to go over the Season 8 room rules. Now, it's going to be a little bit confusing, right? Because we actually don't know how most of these rooms work. I did record a video with Valley Flying, so the defenses that I have on my screen were based off of my initial understanding, and then you said, we don't think it works that way. But more importantly than that, if you're watching this at the time of release of the video, there's going to be a tournament. And who's going to win the tournament? I'm going to win the tournament, right?
The luckiest man in MSF, that's right.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter how good they are at the game. They can't match my luck. Luck trumps skill all days long. Now, the reason why you want to come out is because there is going to be prizes provided by the developer, and this is going to be a 3-hour tournament. We're all going to be randomly put in there, and then, you know, it'll be just like a 3-hour Cosmic Crucible, what normally takes 3 days, right? It's going to be a lot of fun, right? I hope they do more of
I'm
this.
not even in the tournament, and I'm vibrating with excitement for this.
But you were invited to the tournament, correct? That's what a lot of people
Yes.
like, why isn't XYZ here? I think everybody had an opportunity to get in on this. It was just...
Yeah, we all did. I wanted to cover it, and then it turned out my schedule wouldn't even allow me to do that. So I'm going to be an hour late to it. So just go slow, and then I'll get there.
Okay, so we're going to talk about these room bonuses for Season 8, and a lot of what we're going to talk about in this video, we don't actually know how it's going to work. And so there will probably be follow-ups on what we think actually is happening, because there's some rooms where I had some thoughts, you had some thoughts, and then it turns out that order of operations for when room rules go into effect and whether or not room rules affect passives seems to be highly in question. And also, if this is on the test server, what if that's different in game? We've had things like that happen before, right? So test server footage, everything's subject to change. Where do we want to start? We want to start with the overall rules for the entire season?
Yeah, let's just left to right, I guess.
Okay, so every Cosmic Crucible has these rooms, 20% max health and 10% damage on defense, and then they get exhausted. Nothing new there. What is new is that Cabal is getting the bonuses. On defense and offense, Cabal characters count as Masters of Evil. That's a pretty big deal, right? Tell me why that's a big deal.
Well, I mean, the Masters of Evil and the Cabal teams are two of the best in Cosmic Crucible, Superior 6, of course, being right up there with them. If you want to mix and match those teams, be my guest. I don't really plan on doing too much of that myself, because I don't know if there's so much going on, and with the unknowns in these room rules, I want to have as many offensive options as possible.
Right. And I feel like last season anyways, probably one of the best offensive teams would have been like Kang and Cabal, right? I mean, that, but you have to break up two teams, right? And that's what that was always the risk, is do you want to break up two teams? So this will be very strong. Now, let's talk about room 1. And I think that you and I came to a similar conclusion on this. On defense and offense, all characters on turn clear vulnerable from self and heal 20% of max health for each vulnerable effect removed this way. Characters with vulnerable gain minus 25% resistance. Now, I'll just tell you what I thought, and you tell me if you agree or disagree. It's kind of a nothing burger for most teams, but Iron Patriot applies vulnerable on spawn, and all of the really cool things that Cabal doesn't work if the vulnerables disappear. That's kind of why, like, Green Goblin was like a kind of a little bit of a counter to Cabal, right? And so I was thinking, when I see Super Skrull on defense, my default go-to team is Cabal. So I had the bright idea of putting something here with Super Skrull. Does that make sense? What did you think?
Yeah, I had a similar idea. Side note, though, I had help from my friends like usual, so I don't want to be taking all the credit for my ideas here.
All right.
But I did end up with, after going over this with some people, I did decide to go with the Mercs for Money in this room, because they are a team that I think is going to require like a Cabal APOC or a Cabal Sus or something like that to beat. I think they're ferocious.
What if we put Mercs for Money with Super Skrull and just get rid of Deadpool?
And so I think this is a room where you want to put a team that would normally call for a Cabal counter, and it's going to be much tougher in here because of the whole vulnerable situation. Something else to note, I don't think that you want to run Spider Society in this room, because Peter Parker, I believe it's his kit, he clears those vulnerables from his own team and does healing. And so you could be using a similar mechanic with that team in another room naturally, and it would be a waste of these rules.
Good call. Good call. Yeah. So something that would normally be countered by Cabal wants to go here. That's the general idea. Now, this room here, we talked about this before, and I'll read the room rules. On defense and offense, all characters on turn gain bleed. And so I was like, Ghost Rider Robbie, right? Get some speed. And then you threw a wrench in this whole thing, right? With bleed, gain 5% damage per bleed. When applying bleed, gain defense up. So tell me what we know or what we're thinking about this room bonus and the way that room bonuses interact with passives. Do we know for sure, or are we guessing?
We are almost sure. It's very much perceived to be this way, so much so that I would recommend to anybody going in that they not bother using Robbie in here thinking he's going to get speed. Most of us feel that's not going to take effect, that the room applied negative effects are not going to trigger the passives like how a character would. So you have Robbie in there and you're thinking everybody's who takes a turn is going to get a bleed and give him that little bit of speed. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to be a waste. And Robbie should be better paired with somebody like a Noir who jumps out early and puts bleeds out with his first attack and gives Robbie the speed naturally. Right. So what I ended up doing was an Infinity Watch in 2 because they're going to get the safeguard immunity on spawn and those won't take effect that first turn. They're the nothing team, right? The filler kind of thing that just soaks up attacks and is hard to be destroyed. And remember, they're going to be evenly built in this tournament with other teams.
Yep.
So even though they're older, they're still going to be as powerful almost.
Yep.
And so I think they're my choice because I just don't know how those bleeds are going to work.
Yep. Okay. So another reason to come out and watch the streams, right? I mean, or right now, right? Probably if you're watching this video right now, this tournament is probably happening right now. And maybe this question will be answered throughout the course of the events. I'm sure we're going to know so much more after this. Now, room 3, double tap. On defense and offense, on successful hit, if target has exposed, perform a basic attack against the target. Characters with exposed have minus 20% resistance. So this is kind of a nothing room in some ways because how many characters have exposed? 3?
Vol, Sus, and Nightcrawler.
So I just said, okay, what's a generally good defensive team that happens to have exposed? There you go, right? I mean, I was just, why not? I mean, I could put that in a different room if I wanted to, but I might as well put it here, and then maybe there'll be some small advantage with Nightcrawler. What applies? He goes early in the match, and he applies it with a special. Exposed doesn't always land too, because there's a focus resistance chance on exposed. So if you've played raids,
Vol and incursion raids.
Oh yeah, if you played incursion raids with Vol, that exposed does not land. Did you have any other thoughts on this other than Vol and Super Scroll?
So we did look at Vol, we did look at Super Scroll, we looked at putting all 3 in there, trying to get as many exposed in there. But the whole thing is that it's what, minus 20% resistance? That's not huge. That's not worth just plugging in those tunes to make them do anything. So we just went with a team that's a good defense that's tricky. I personally dropped Cyclops and put in a Bishop, which again is a big Bishop, so he's not dying and triggering the passive of Rogue, but he is going to make it a little bit more challenging to try and control Forge, to try and control Nightcrawler. But otherwise, yeah, we had the same idea on this room, basically.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a nothing room. Just throw something with Nightcrawler on there. Okay, so this room here, when I read this room, let's read it. I thought there was an obvious choice, and then you're telling me maybe not. On defense and offense, all characters on turn clear all negative effects from character, which makes trauma important. And then on turn gain defense down, offense down, slow, and disrupted. And so I was thinking having immunity and maybe safeguard would be nice to prevent that from happening. And so I went to the Cockroaches of Marvel Strike Force, which has safeguard immunity. Tell me why this may not work the way that I just said it.
Well, don't feel bad. I thought this exact same thing, and people smarter than me steered me away from it because We tested this too. When they start their turn, the safeguard drops off, and at the end of their turn, they lose the immunity, and we think that that is when the negative effects will then be applied to them, and they're not going to have any better resistance to this room than any other team, really, because it's on turn end, gain, defense down, all that other stuff, and we think that they're going to be available to have those things applied to them. So not a whole lot going on there. Instead, I ended up going with the Spider Society, and I threw in Captain Sam in there. So the idea of that is that Peter B. Parker is going to be cleansing that team and hopefully doing his thing. This Spider Society team is a pretty strong team in the first place. But yeah, the first thought was Infinity Watch, but you're just not going to get the mileage out of them like you will. So I think look at what negative effects are going to be applied and come up with other options of characters that might do better with those things.
I mean, in general, Infinity Watch is probably a good team. It's an efficiency killer at a minimum. You know, it's kind of like a staple defensive team. All right, room 5. So initially when I looked at room 5, I thought Black Cat, Black Cat. And then we're going to talk about that also. On defense and offense, villain characters. On spawn, gain revive once at 50% max health. So this is just a villain room. I think Undying with some other baddies would be useful here, or Superior 6. What do you think here?
I think Superior 6 is a good choice here as well. I ended up throwing in a Darkhold with Quicksilver just because they kind of tank those hits and they absorb a lot. And I wanted my Superior 6 for offense because I would expect a lot of weird things, and Superior 6 covers a lot of weird things.
So talk about Black Cat, because that's what we were looking. Again, we're thinking is like, okay, so what is the counter to revive once? Is kind of Black Cat. Well, how does that work with the order of operations on spawn? They gain it, and then what? You know, what do you think? For
some reason, Black Cat is, and again, not 100 on this, but we're thinking that Black Cat isn't going to clear the revive once. We're not sure how that mechanic actually functions. And we think that, if you throw a Dormammu in there, he's not going to give you 2 revives. You're only going to get the one that the room gives you. So when you throw in, like Infinity Watch, the 2 members that don't have revive will get a revive from the room. And we're not sure if their revives, are, like the 3 members that have a revive once, we're not sure if they're going to get their revive or the room's revive. But we think that the room's revive will not, for some reason, be clearable by Black Cat. There are some people that are telling me that they know this to be true.
Okay.
I was unable to test it because it's the test server. Y'all know I hate that.
We can't test anything. So we're guessing on how this is going to work.
So round 1 is going to be very important to see if anybody can clear revives with the characters in the game that can clear revives.
Okay. Then the last room right here, which we've seen this type of room before. On defense and offense, all characters, after using an ultimate ability, spread all positive effects to adjacent allies. That's new. Ultimate abilities cost 2 less ability energy. So we've seen rooms like this for multiple seasons, right? And this was kind of like one of the default defenses back in the day. Darkhold with Quicksilver. And then typically on offense, they're using some sort of Tangled Web and Nova and so on to counter this team in Doom. What do you think about this room? This is pretty familiar, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing, maybe even a little souped up with spreading the positive effects to the adjacent allies. I ended up going with a kitchen sink kind of room. Like I said, I had the Mercs for money in 1, and I think that's a Cabal call out. So I put in another team that wants Cabal as a counter also, which is going to be my Sus team. Sus, Black Knight, Dormammu, Doom, and I threw in Captain America so that they get the deflex on spawn. So if you do decide to use Cabal into room 6, they're going to be blocking in the opening, which kind of works against the Cabal. So I made it really tough. 2 teams that you want to use Cabal on, 2 teams that are really going to be tough to use Cabal on.
Yeah, basically, if you put Super Skrull in this room right here, which Super Skrull's nasty when he ults turn 1, right? I mean, that's going to be ugly. I mean, he's going to be ulting all the time and taking a lot of turns. Pretty much forced to use Cabal here, right? If that's the case. And then
I think so.
Then Cabal's not going to work in room 1. And then, Mercs for money, which our prediction, and rightfully so, I think they're going to be very powerful. They seem like he's really good. And we're going to have access to a full Mercs for Money team in this tournament. No Mephisto, no Alpha Flight. And then lastly, let's talk about what is missing from the room rules. No raid room.
That's right.
No raid room. So I kind of thought that, you know, some of the value added in Alpha Flight would be a raid room, and it doesn't exist here, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
All right.
And no war room really either. And they have both those call outs.
I saw a couple comments here on YouTube saying, wouldn't it be cool if they have a war room? And I think we asked that at the summit, right? I remember asking that at the summit. It was like, are there ever going to be a war room? And they never say anything in absolute terms, but the general feeling I got when that question was asked is like, well, you already get to do war matches. Why would we duplicate that here, right? You already know. You already know what a war versus war battle is going to be like because you play in war all the time. And so that's why.
And I'm okay with that. I don't want a war room in here personally, but it is kind of weird that when Alpha Flight has those dual tags with the raid, they're not something in here. Maybe Alpha Flight's just so far out, they plan on, you know, giving them the nod in the next season after this. I'm not sure.
Maybe. All right, so check out the tournament. We're going to have a blast. I know you're going to do a full recap. Hopefully I can do a recap over it as well. It should be a blast, and there will be special door prizes, and more importantly, maybe we'll learn on how these rooms actually work. Marvel Strike Force is the best. The mechanics are the best. Everything's the best. Anything you want to say before we go?
Even if we do figure it out, the tournament players will be playing on the test server, and it may end up being different when it gets to the live server. So even if we do figure it out, there still might be some changes after that.
What if the test server is different than the live? That's going to be garbage. Oh my God. All right.
But hey, I'm going to have fun no matter what happens, because hopefully the bugs will be equal for every player.
Okay. Yeah, it takes us a couple weeks to figure out these rooms anyways. So let me know what you think in the comment section, and come hang out with us on Twitch. Bye for now.